remember how to play that song on harmonium. Very nice song to meditate upon. So we are reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta, volume number 2. Chapter title is Stay High Forever. This is the goal of our life. I will read just few sentences because our memory is so dull. When she reached the park, the kirtan was going on, but she couldn't see much because of the crowd. This was Judy speaking. She weaved her way in closer until she could see some men. One seven-headed, several bearded, dancing with unraised hands. And in the center, she saw the Swami sitting on a rug, playing his drum. So we will continue from there. Dan Clark was 25, thin, intense, horn-rimmed, bespectacled, an avant-garde filmmaker. And his first film was entitled Rebirth. He was a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War and was working at a home for children as alternative governmental service. He had been a member of the SDS and the War Registers League. He had been arrested during a protest demonstration, and he had been suspended 1 week from his job for wearing a peace button and a black armband. He was into Buddhism, but he had lately been adding, quote, a little psychedelic seasoning, unquote. Again, quote, everything is nothing and nothing is everything, unquote, was his slogan. And he would go around chanting it like a mantra. But he was feeling that at least psychologically he needed a devotional tonic. His Voidistic meditation was getting stale. Dan had come to the park today looking for the Swami and the chanting he had read about in the East Village Father. He had seen the Swami before, one evening a few months back. He had been waiting for a bus across the street from the Swami's storefront. He was on the way to a rehearsal for a mixed media show, and his friend had gone into Sam's luncheonette for a moment. When he noticed that in the storefront an orange-robed Indian man with a shaved head was lecturing to a small group of young people, Dan is describing in his own word as follows. When I saw him, I imagined myself walking across the street, going into the storefront, sitting down and renouncing all worldly connections. But I thought to myself, quote, it's only my imagination. After all, I'm married and I'm on my way to rehearsal, and I don't know anything about the Swami anyway, unquote. So my friend and I got on the bus. But Dan lived only a few blocks away from the storefront, and now and then he would pass by. Once he had stood for several minutes on the sidewalk looking at the cover of the Srimad Bhagavatam taped onto the window. So Dan is describing. It shows an oval lotus with planet around it. And right then, I was introduced to the idea of spiritual sensuality. And when I saw the painting of Lord Chaitanya and his associates in the window, that really threw me. I thought, quote, yes, this is what I need, juice, unquote. Dan and his wife walked and paved a pathway through the park. He was looking around for Swami, but he didn't really know what to look for. He expected to see ropes and hear Buddhist style chanting, but he couldn't find anything. He had given up his search and was wandering around to see what musicians were there when he noticed a big crowd gather around what he figured must have been some musicians. He was attracted by the beat of their music, a chiming 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a simple rhythm with a kind of flamboyance and very magnetic. He saw an occasional upraised arm above the crowd, and he thought there must be flamenco dancing going on inside the circle. He then got wind of drifting melody, certainly not flamenco, which accompanied the beat, and these attracted him further. He approached closer and closer, making his way through the crowd. Then he saw people chanting and others dancing and waving their arm in what he took to be a blend of American Indian and Asian dancing. It looked like something from a long forgotten era. Dan decided that this must be the Hare Krishna group. But there were no ropes, just the regular dress of a Lower East Side. And where was the Swami Day? Then he saw him sitting inconspicuous, playing a little drum. His eyes were closed and his brow was knit with concentration. Dan continued. The Swami wasn't calling attention to himself, and at first I didn't attribute any importance to an elderly Indian man sitting up on one side. He didn't seem to have any special function in the chanting. But it gradually dawned on me who he was. He was the same Swami I had read about in the paper and seen in the storefront. After a while he spoke, but I couldn't hear him. Still, I was impressed that he was a very modest person, not interested in getting himself up on a pedestal. He didn't go strutting around, but was still with inner peace, strength, and knowledge. So now the Baba is explaining in his own word. All his disciples were there around his feet. They were chanting, and I tried to chant along and learn the mantra too. I had heard the chanting of the Hare Krishna once before at a peace march, and I had found it very beautiful. Then the Swami spoke. I had the impression that this person was not earthly, and I thought, good, Hare, here is the person I'm looking for, unquote. He seems to be different from anyone else, like he came from some other place or universe, and I was attracted. After a second kirtan, the Swami and his followers rolled up the rug, picked up their instruments, and began to leave. Bob walked back to the swing on the other side of the park to find his wife and child. But the image of the Swami stayed with him. Quote, he seems different from anyone else. Unquote. His accent had been thick, yet Bob resolved to go to the storefront in a few days to hear him speak. Quote, here is a leader, unquote, thought Bob. Dan and his wife sauntered off into the park, sampling the various group of musicians. His wife was surprised that Dan, who was usually shy, had danced at the kirtan. He said he might go over to the storefront one day and hear the Swami speak. Judy just stood there hallucinating. She held a Stay High Forever pamphlet in her hand and read it over and over and over. While she was thinking the whole event must have come from another planet, a man walked up and asked, quote, would you like to go to the where Swami is? She nodded. At the storefront, one of the devotees offered Judy some prasadam, a chapati, and then invited her up to the Swami's room. Upstairs, she entered the large room, which was filled with fragrant smoke. There were tall flower vases, and sesame seeds were on the floor. She saw the Swami bow before the little picture of Lord Chaitanya and his associates, and then stand and leave the room, closing the door behind him. Judy decided that he must have been bound to the floor itself. Around her, everyone was softly chanting on beats, and although she couldn't make out the words, it seems very peaceful. One of the Swami's disciples told her she could come into the back room, and she followed, curious. The Swami was sitting there on his mat, looking effulgent, and there were about 10 other people in the room. Prabhupada asked her if she liked the chanting in the park, and she replied, quote, I loved it, unquote. Quote, do you live near here? Unquote, he asked. Judy flashed on her idea that she was all-pervading truth and answered in a way which she thought must have sounded very mystical. Quote, oh, I live very near, unquote. Good, said Swamiji. Then you can come for our morning kirtan and class. Then she realized that she didn't live so near and that it would be mean traveling in an hour and a half from the Bronx to visit the Swami. But she decided that since he had asked her, she would come. What a nice gesture people has, right? So nice to see that how much good culture, even though they may have been diluted by the influence of drugs and everything, but we can say they were gems. Then she thought, quote, I'm making this up, unquote. But Prabhupada assured her, as if knowing her thoughts, quote, this process is nothing you have made up. It is very old, very simple and sublime, unquote. He leaned back and then says, quote, "We are eternal," unquote, he said, quote, "and everything around us is temporary," unquote. Julie was now coming down from the LSD. By the time she left the Swami, it was late. She had wanted to stay overnight, but the boys hadn't allowed her. But she was determined to join. For Bob, it seemed natural to follow up on what he had seen in the park. He began attending the evening classes and he started reading the Bhagavatam at home and chanting. He framed the picture from the Bhagavatam dust jacket depicting the spiritual sky and placed it on his small homemade altar. He would offer flower before the picture and sit before it chanting Hare Krishna. Bob was fascinated by the philosophy and the books and classes, and from the very beginning he was amazed that Swamiji's teachings answered all his questions. He listened carefully and accepted, quote, "It seems like once I had decided that he was telling the truth, I just accepted everything he said. Not that part of it was the truth, and the rest of it I would have to think about," unquote. October 19th. It was Monday evening after the Sunday Kirtan in the park, and Dan arrived at the shorefront for Kirtan. The Kirtan was in full swing, and when he entered, the first thing he noticed that some people playing on the innodes of an upright piano leaning against the wall near the door. A boy handed him some wooden sticks and he sat down and joined in the Kirtan. Then came the Swami's lecture, which Dan thought was long and serious, about how sexual desire causes bondage and suffering. The temple was crowded and stuffy, and Dan was shocked by the lecture. But he stayed on because he knew there would be another Kirtan. He felt uneasy that the Swami's followers were all celibate. But because he liked the Kirtan, he resolved to keep coming. Haribol. The Swami wasn't quite what Dan had expected. He had imagined something of a light-hearted Zen Roshi, laughing and joking, with sparkling eyes and words filled with paradoxes. But he found the Swami just the opposite, very straightforward and even cutting in his speech, and his mouth turned down at the corners, making him look mournful. Dan happily took to the Kirtans, thinking they would aid his impersonal meditation. But the lecture kept stressing that God was a person. Dan resisted. He mentally debated with Prabhupada. He was partial to Dr. Radhakrishna's interpretation of the Gita. And yet, the Swami often launched ruthless attacks against such impersonal ideas. Gradually, Dan saw his impersonal barrier crumble, and he came to admit that on every count, the Swami was right. Judy began attending both the morning and evening classes. She had to rise by 5 o'clock to get to the storefront on time. And mother and father protested. But Judy didn't care. She would ride an hour and a half on the subway before dawn, downtown to the Swami's meetings, where she would be the only girl present. Haribol. When the Swami heard that Judy was an art student, he asked her to paint for Krishna. She set up a canvas in the front room of the apartment, and under his guidance, she began painting. For her first assignment, he asked her to paint a portrait of his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He gave her a photo and instructed her there should be a flower garland around Guru Maharaj's neck. The tilak should be yellowish, not white, and there should be no effulgence or halo around his head. Prabhupada gave really nice instructions. So Bobby is explaining in his own words as follows. I began chanting and studying the Srimad Bhagavatam at home, attending the kirtan and classes at the storefront. After the last kirtan in the evening, the Swami would take a bowl made of simulated wood and a little paring knife and a couple of apples that had been sitting on the edge of his lectern. And he would cut the apple up in the little bowl and hand the bowl to a disciple. The disciple would then offer him the first piece, and he would pop it into his mouth. The rest of the pieces of apple would be distributed to the crowd. I remember one time when he was chewing on his piece of apple, and he spit the seeds out on the floor up against the wall. They bounced off the wall onto the floor next to the dais. And I was thinking, quote, how wonderful. No one else can do that. No one else would have the nerve to do such a thing, unquote. With his atheistic filmmaker's eye, Dan appreciated Swamiji's manner. So Dan is explaining in his own words as follows. There was a sink right next to the dais where he sat. It was so close that he could have leaned over and touched it. After cutting up an apple, he would take the scraps and just fling them into the sink. It was very casual. I was very impressed by that. And one time Brahmananda came up and wanted 50 cents for something, and the Swami reached down and picked up his little black purse, the kind that closes by a metal clap at the top. He snapped it open, loaded inside very perspicuously, and then his hand came up like a bird, like an eagle hovering in flight above its prey. But the hand didn't pounce. It just delicately drifted down, took out a 50-cent piece, and rose up again as if it were being lifted up on the balloon. It was graceful. It was a dance, a ballet. He just picked up this 50-cent piece and lifted it into Brahmananda's hand. I couldn't believe it. Someone asks you for a 50-cent piece. You just dig in your pocket and throw it at them. But the Swami seems to treat everything as Krishna's property. And this 50-cent piece was treated with such care. The weeks went by. Some of the devotees had spoken to Bob about initiation, but he was unsure. He didn't know exactly what initiation was, but it seemed to him that the other devotees were eager to get him initiated because he was working and had a family. To Bob's way of thinking, he represented a maturity to them, a middle-class American, and they were eager to lend him. Bob's wife wasn't interested, and his friends were downright opposed. He couldn't spend much time with Prabhupada or the devotees since he was either at the office or at home with his family. Here, 5 moments. So Bob is continuing describing. So they were asking me if I was interested in initiation. I said I would think about it. I hadn't stopped smoking. I hadn't made the final decision. The first real personal exchange I had with the Swami was when I asked for initiation. The rest of the time I was so much in awe of him that it didn't occur to me to say anything. I always wanted to. I felt puffed up and I always thought, good, well, I should be able to talk to him. Maybe I should do something unquote. But I was always kind of reluctant to do it. I didn't think it was my place. I guess maybe I was afraid. But I was getting up early and chanting 32 rounds a day. Haribol. What a nice. I think my Guru Maharaj was saying something like that, that they were counting differently. So even though they were chanting 16, but they were counting as 32. I forgot how they were. He revealed to me, but I completely forgot now. Haribol. Huh. Many of them on the subway, that 32 run. I was afraid of the material world because I didn't have much association with devotees, and I wanted to insulate myself by chanting more. You know, when I read this sentence, one of the devotees, for last 2 days, he came to my home. One time, first time when he came, I was taking a nap, and he just rang the bell, so I have to answer, but he saw that I was really sleeping. So he said, Prabhu, take the rest, I will come back. Then I heard that he visited my house yesterday also to see me. And I'm just thinking, when he will come, my response will be, you can come in and we can chant together. If you have any other thoughts, then I'm not interested. Hare Krishna. Judy was another person who was considering initiation. And I asked her what she was going to do about it. And she said, I'm thinking about it. And then she told me that she had decided she would get initiated and give up all her bad habits. I began to think maybe I could give up these things too. So I asked what to do. How do I approach him? And Kirtananda says, wow, you go up to his room. And I was surprised. It was so easy. Prabhupada makes everyone's life so easy, huh? Just follow his instruction from your heart and your life will become so sublime. Prabhupada has came us to save from this nations of this material existence. And if he will sincerely take up, I don't know why, but I'm thinking so weird thing in my mind always, that this world, what is there that we got attracted to? Everything will be stolen away from us, including our own body that we are so proud of and has spent so much of our time decorating it. Just think about it. 3 times a day, how much trouble are we giving to our wife? I think that hardly I allow my wife to cook at least 1 time maybe. Sometimes not even 1 time a day. Eat some things very simple, khakra and ginger tea, something. Flat rice, bataka palwa and ginger tea. Simplified. How much time, if we have some measurement that the equal amount we put, it must be as big as a mountain. We just eat so much, and then we need to sleep to digest it. So these are something. I think one of the devotee was asking me about the anger, how to control anger. I think everyone is facing that problem sometime in our life. That moment may have not come in your life, but definitely it's on its way. Unless we prepare our mind, how we should see the things, anything happen, we should not get mad. Who has created the problem for us? Just accept it as it's coming from Krishna, and it will eliminate everything. Once you accept, then nobody can hurt you. Unless we have done something wrong, then the result, we have to face it. There is no choice. Krishna will never give us any suffering if we don't deserve it. But at the same time, because he has created a law that it just automatically work on us, still we see that for the completely surrendered devotees, he intervened to reduce the suffering. So he is very kind. He is aware of everything. Of all the living beings, he knows. So anything happened, we became upset because we can't accept those things in our life. It's hard to accept those things in our life, so we become angry. But we should think before we become angry. And if we are chanting very nicely, Krishna will give you little patience to dwell on it before we become angry. Is anger is going to solve that problem? Ask that question. It's going to make it even worse. Because you are going to offend someone that doesn't need anything from you, because whatever that happened, that person has to perform. It's sanctioned by Krishna. So a lot of the time, we blame the person who is speaking, but in reality, we should seize in behind the hand of Krishna. He is allowing that person to speak. We should not become angry, but we should. listen very attentively the message that he is trying to give us. Most of the time in the anger, we don't listen other persons, and we try to create our responses to this anger. Responses to his saying whatever the incident may be. We want to defend it very heavily. But then we will regret when everything will be finished. Nothing, absolutely nothing you can solve by becoming angry. You are hurting yourself more than the person is making you angry. So the best thing is when those circumstances come, which definitely will come, Krishna tests us in all respect. Don't think that nothing will happen in our life. So many things will happen, even undesirable things that you never expected in your life will happen. So many things may happen. And then, if we will remain in that mood, then let's see what Krishna is trying to tell me. I still remember the 3-step meditation by Sachinandan Swami Maharaj. One step is grounding, means we should accept that we are very insignificant. We have no quality, ability to do anything on our own. We are just like a puppet. Always 3 modes of material nature is acting through us. We think that we are doing the things, but in reality, in the false ego, it says in Bhagavad Gita, we think that we are the doer, but in reality, the 3 modes of material nature is inducing us to act in a certain way. So we should feel like that. And step 2, Maharaj says that anything happen, don't blame other people. Just accept it. And then if you accept it from your heart, whatever, if somebody is saying that maybe you may have not done it, but accept it. There must be some reason why Krishna is bringing that situation in our life. And more you practice this exercise, slowly and slowly it will become very easy to understand where we are in our practice of devotional life, why Krishna brings those situations so we can get closer to him, sometime in a nice way, sometime in a bad way. Who knows? Whatever it may be, but we should know that Krishna is helping us to go closer to him. We see that example of so many great personalities. They suffer even though they undeserve for that suffering. Those suffering comes maybe sometime as a mercy of Krishna. We don't know. Sometime maybe because of our past misdeed that we may have performed. It's very difficult. This 3 modes of material nature is so stringent that it's very difficult to find why certain things happen in our life at certain time of the phase in our life. It's just simply a mercy of Krishna. Any situation you consider in your life, it may be worst, but still we should come to the level of understanding that's Krishna's mercy. And if we dwell more and more, we will realize that yes, that was Krishna's plan. If we remain attentive, then you will see the benefit of it. And you will make corrective actions in your life. Otherwise, how we are going to transform our feelings in our heart toward Krishna. We have so much envy in our heart for everyone, including Krishna. That's the reason we came in the material world. So things will come in our life that we don't like to see that comes in our life. But we have to take it so happily that Krishna is finally showering his mercy to enlighten us that this is material world. Learn it sooner than later, it's better. But Krishna is very kind. He will teach us when we become sincere. Initial stage, he may not take any actions. He's so kind that we may not be able to take those things in our life, and we run away from him, which he doesn't want to do that. But when you show your sincerity, then he will bring those problems in your life, definitely, to give you another step of purification. So I think we should never become angry. We should always remain blissful, because what can we do? Ask yourself, nothing. Certain things gonna happen in our life, and we have to learn how to live with it. That is the only way we will be able to live peacefully despite adverse situations in our life. And peacefulness is required to perform steadfast devotion. If your mind is agitated, you won't be able to concentrate anything. You won't be able to perform your duty properly. Neither you will be able to maintain your sadhana properly because of our flickering mind. So whatever it happened, remain peaceful. Just accept it. Learn to accept. That's it. And you will see your life will show you another way. And that you will appreciate that Krishna, you are so kind to give me the directions. Sometimes, the message will never sink into our mind and heart unless something really drastic happens. We heard the classes, we heard the literatures, but we have not changed it. Why? So Krishna makes some arrangement so we can listen his message sincerely. So that's his mercy, not punishment. So I think, I don't know the devotee who asked me the question, he is on the line or not. Let me see. I think he said he would like to speak to me personally on the phone or something. But I said, no, we are struggling with that thing. Everyone is facing that situation, so I will speak at 7 o'clock. No, I think he's not there. He may give me a call during the day. But I think this is the lesson. As a devotee, it's our primary duty to slowly and slowly give up those unnecessarily attachments and